Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Now we invite the next speaker. The speaker is Mr. Masataka Kuwabara. He lives in Okayama Prefecture, and in January 2022, at Money Forward company, he has been engaged in a RBS maintenance for the development of RBS and also the development of Money Forward Cloud Accounting Plus. And the method he likes about Ruby is IO reopen. He has been stagnant there for some time. I'm sure that he is feeling nervous. I'm sorry about this. Now I give you Mr. Kuwabara, please. Thank you very much. The theme is RBS tutorial. Let me start with a self-introduction. My name is Kuwabara. I am called Pokke. And I am in charge of Cloud Accounting Plus application and maintenance of RBS with Money Forward Inc. I live in Okayama. I came by Yakumo train this morning. iOS reopen is a very interesting method, so I encourage you to read this. Now, Matsue. This is the second time after the interval of 5 years, and this is the time I came 5 years ago. Snow laid heavy, and there were a lot of traffic congestion, difficult to get on the bus, but Matsue Castle looked so beautiful. Today, this is the goal I like to achieve. In developing applications with RBS, what kind of information you would like to know to do this without confusion? And the presentation materials, I wanted to open this before this talk, but after this talk, I am going to disclose this presentation materials, and you will find a lot of URL and useful information. And RBS, what is RBS? What kind of file it is? And then I'd like to go through some RBS syntax and describe how to start RBS. And the ways to use libraries is rather different with RBS, and also some references as I give you a lot of links. Now, RBS file. This is the language to define the Ruby types. From Ruby file, it is completely separate from the Ruby file. At the same time, different from Solve, which writes a type with the Ruby code, but for RBS, a quite separate language, RBS, is used for implementation. And the files are separate. What does it mean? Basically, .rb file, usually you don't write type definitions. And this relationship with the Ruby file and the RBS file are similar to .c and .h, or JavaScript.js and JavaScript.d.ts. Those relationships are similar to each other. And as one more feature, RBS environment. What class and what methods are contained with RBS, and that is the environment. And RBS environment is created only from RBS file. So classes defined in Ruby file, and that may exist in Ruby, but if there are no definitions given in RBS, and RBS doesn't recognize the class. And those are the areas which might change in the future. The first one is that RBS definition may be written in RB file, and that has been suggested for some time. For instance, within comments, you might want to write definitions. And as I mentioned earlier, within Ruby, class definitions may exist, but it doesn't get reflected in RBS, and that should be changed, and such restrictions should be relaxed according to the opinions of some users. Nothing has been decided, however, but in order to introduce the RBS, those are some of the changes I'd like to see in the future. Now about RBS syntax. There are many similarities with Ruby, but there are also differences. So this may confuse you in certain cases in the beginning. First, class and module definition. They are now quite close to what is with Ruby. For module definition, no difference, and for class definition, almost the same with Ruby. But the definition of constant is different. In RBS, what you need is a type information, so only integer is given for x. And at the very end is the most recent function. In Ruby, you might want to give a different name to class. And in RBS, that can now be supported, and the syntax is somewhat different. And after class, you enter a class. And for method definitions, this is most characteristics about RBS in comparison to Ruby. The simplest one is the top case. In Ruby, 42. If that is the return value, for RBS, there is no argument, so integer should be returned. The next example, private. The visible identifier is to be written before def. That has been recently introduced. Or, in a usual case, you may write private. And the method of receiving a block can be written. And the keyword argument is also supported. So what can be written with Ruby, the methods definitions are supported, and Atra reader, among others. And what doesn't exist in Ruby exists in RBS. For instance, interfaces. String IO and IO, you cannot write that a certain class is received. So read is to be defined. If you could read, then interface reader can be used. And in the case of a reader interface, a read method, and you may receive the two arguments and return a string. With such a method definition, interface can be defined, an object which meets that interface, then IO or something you make can be passed on. There are some other features about syntaxes, type alias and type parameter, among others. Syntax MD is the document that describes such information in detail, so you might want to start reading such a document. Now, how to start RBS? I want to show you a small minimal example where RBS, STEEP, and the VS Code are used. So that's the example I'm going to share with you today. First, VS Code, but other editors also supported. RBS, I'm sure works on editors you use, but STEEP works on editors supporting LSP. So logically, if it's supporting LSD, any editor can be used. But plugin which highlights RBS syntax is preferable, and Tools MD is the area where you can find a full list of editors. VS Code, I believe, is now quite convenient as it is well integrated with LSP, and Shotaro Matsumoto, who develops LBS are also there in RBS as officially developed plugins. So those are the matters you might know well. But in reality, gems, gem steep needs to be written and require false is something often recommended. I'd like to share with you later about RBS collection. In using that function, require false will be quite helpful. And the other is just bundle install. And gem RBS are not usually required because steep depends on RBS gem. Now, the configuration of steep. This is the minimum configuration of steep to run. And what it is now doing is as follows. First, the second line signature shows where RBS is placed. In RBS, SIG directory is used, and signature SIG is usually written. Then Ruby file in what directly should be checked, so check needs to be written. Through this lib or app, in the case of Rails for app, directly check can be executed. So this is the minimum configuration of steep to run, but what type analysis should be designated? In such a case, steep unit allows you to generate a steep file, and then by reading this, what items of configuration are there can be read. So after writing such a gem file, in this case, this is a method where string doesn't exist, then error is shown, and a method storage it can be possible. So with this, you can write this much. And as directory configuration structure, there are several things. As I mentioned, the RBS file are usually under SIG directly. And when gem package is used, when the file is in SIG directly, RBS is disclosed, and else directly should be written in SIG directly. And SIG directly, underneath it, there are the strong restrictions. So basically, you can run the steep no matter how the placement is done. But I recommend that Ruby the structure the same with the Ruby file. For instance, for Rails app, user RB. In that case, user RBS, user RB SIG model user RBS, and bean steep, which is also very convenient, but I'll skip this. And actually, I don't have time to go through this either, but when you use the Rails app, RBS Rail is the gem I make, and I recommend you to use this. And for RBS prototype, is something to use for generate RBS, and which is good for making a large application. And this is something I discussed at Ruby Kaigi this year. So for large applications, how you can use RBS, I recommend you to visit my talk at the Ruby Kaigi 2023. Now about libraries. In RBS, there are three kinds of libraries. One, a core library, for instance, the array string, which can be used without requiring. And second, the standard library. Path name, Reaper, those which are included in Ruby, but requirement is necessary for use, and gem. It is not included in the Ruby, and you need to make requirement. And bundled gems are also included. Then how it is handled in RBS? In the case of a core library, the types are valid without doing anything, and a type definition of Rail can be used without doing anything, and array type definition basically isn't used. And for standard library, it contains their signatures, so you need to specify the gem explicitly to load it, and this can be, however, covered by RBS correction. And for gem, it's more or less the same. Basically, you use RBS collection as a tool, and gem type definition, whether it's in SIG or it could be taken from a GitHub repository, and RBS collection as a tool. 2 years ago in Ruby Kaigi, I discussed this one, so please look at it again. So I'd like to show you some of the links briefly. If you want to know more about syntax, Syntax MD is a good place to start. And 2 years ago, I wrote a major overview in my blog, and also I recently wrote another one. And for developers, C's are manually written, so if you read the past C, I'm sure that you'll be able to understand completely. That's for developers. And for official documents, docs directly is recommended, and RBS by example is a good material. You can learn RBS by looking at examples, and I think that's a very good starting point to learn RBS. And where the current RBS exists, core file and standard library and gem, what kind of libraries are there would be understood if you look at this document. And also my past talks can also be a good reference material. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you very much, Mr. Kuwabara. Again, no time for questions from the floor. So please exchange business cards with him and ask him on an individual basis. Please give him a big hand of applause. Thank you, Mr. Kuwabara.
Now, we would like to invite the next speaker from Canon Medical Systems. The speaker is Mr. Masatoshi Seki. We will prepare the stage. Could you please wait a little bit?